Sarah had always felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She grew up in a small town where every day seemed like a battle to survive. It was hard enough facing the struggles of life, but every setback seemed like another sign that she was being abandoned by fate. Her family, her friends, even her dreams' very thing, felt like it was slipping through her fingers. But deep inside her, there was a whisper, a quiet voice she had often heard but never truly listened to. One night, as she sat by the window watching the stars, something changed. A thought, a promise, entered her heart. God was there. He hadn't left her. In fact, he was with her every step of the way, offering her protection and love in ways she couldn't yet see. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a sense of peace, a deep knowing that no matter what the future held, she wasn't walking alone. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah began to feel a shift in her life. She had been struggling with the weight of her past, carrying the burden of mistakes, regrets, and fears. But slowly, she started to release them, one by one. It wasn't easy, but she felt God's presence surrounding her like a shield, providing her with the courage to let go of the pain. As she did, she noticed something amazing. The chains of fear and self-doubt that had once bound her were starting to break, and she could breathe again. God's love was more than just a feeling. It was a guiding force, a steady hand that helped her navigate the challenges in her path. The road wasn't always smooth, but with every twist and turn, Sarah could feel that she was being led to something better. She no longer feared the unknown. Instead, she embraced it. With God's guidance, she knew that every struggle was just a part of the journey, not the end of the road. It wasn't just her dreams that began to take shape, but her entire life. The healing she had been longing for, the peace she had been searching for, slowly began to settle in her heart. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the blessings that were beginning to unfold before her. Every step she took was now filled with hope, a hope that had been missing for so long. One evening, Sarah sat with her hands clasped in prayer, asking for guidance once again. This time, she didn't feel the need to ask for much. She was content. She felt safe in God's arms, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, He would never abandon her. In her heart, she knew that He had a plan for her, a future full of blessings she couldn't yet imagine. The more Sarah walked in faith, the more she realized that God's love wasn't just about promises, it was about the reality of His protection and provision in every moment. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving, knowing that the future He had for her was greater than anything she had ever hoped for. And as she walked forward, she knew that His love would continue to guide her every step of the way. Eli had always been a man of resilience. Born into a life filled with hardship, he learned early on that the world didn't give anything easily. Each day brought a new challenge, and each night he fell asleep wondering how long he could continue. The weight of his struggles seemed insurmountable. There were moments when he felt lost, caught between the demands of the world and his own spirit yearning for peace. Yet, in the depths of his heart, Eli carried a silent, unspoken prayer for guidance, for strength, and for the wisdom to overcome. One morning, as the sun rose over the mountains, casting a golden glow over the land, Eli sat by the river. He listened to the gentle rustle of the leaves and the soft murmur of the water. In that moment, he felt a presence, a whisper of the divine. It was as though the wind itself carried a message, urging him to trust, to let go of his fears, and to place his faith in something greater than himself. "Trust in me," the whisper seemed to say. "Walk the path before you, and I will guide you." In his heart, Eli knew that this wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was God speaking to him, encouraging him to surrender the weight of his worries and rely on His wisdom. Eli stood, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, and made a decision. He would trust God, not because the path was clear, but because he believed that even in the darkness, God would lead him toward the light. He took a step, then another, and with each one, he felt a little lighter. The fear that had once held him captive began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but the certainty of God's presence filled him with hope. He didn't need to know the outcome. He just needed to follow. The challenges continued to come, as they always did. There were moments when doubt crept in, when the weight of the world seemed to return with even greater force. But Eli had learned something important. In those moments, he didn't need to struggle alone. He remembered the whisper, the call to trust, and he would pause, closing his eyes and surrendering his heart to God. "I trust you," he would say. And in those words, he found the strength to rise above. With each passing day, the doubts grew quieter and the blessings became more apparent. He could see the beauty in the struggle, the lessons hidden within each hardship. As Eli walked further down the path, his life began to change in ways he hadn't imagined. The trials were still there, but they no longer defined him. Instead, he became defined by his faith. He knew that God was guiding him, even when he couldn't see where the road would lead. He felt a deeper connection to the earth beneath his feet and the sky above his head. Everything seemed to align, as if the universe itself was responding to his trust. He began to rise, not above others, but above his own fears, his doubts, and his limitations. Eli's heart overflowed with gratitude. He no longer saw his challenge as burdens, but as stepping stones towards something greater. Every trial, every moment of struggle had been a part of the divine plan to shape him, to mold him into someone stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around him. He realized that trusting in God wasn't just about asking for help. It was about knowing that God's guidance was always there, even when it felt like he was walking in the dark. And as Eli continued on his journey, he found himself not only overcoming the challenges in his own life, but helping others along the way. His story became one of hope, a testament to the power of faith and trust in God's guidance. The blessings that had once seemed so distant were now his reality. With every step, he felt more alive, more connected to the spirit that guided him. He had learned that trust was not a one-time decision, but a daily choice, a choice that would lead him to the fullness of life and to the blessings that God had promised. Kai had always believed that his destiny lay in the stars. From a young age, he felt a pull to achieve great things, to rise beyond the struggles that had shaped his life. His family, though poor, had instilled in him a sense of ambition, a belief that he could make something of himself. As he grew older, Kai's dreams began to take shape. He worked tirelessly. His mind focused on the future. He envisioned a life of success, where he could give his family everything they had never had. Yet, in the quiet moments, he often felt a tug at his heart, reminding him of the love and sacrifices of those who had supported him all along. One evening, as the sun set over the valley, casting long shadows across the earth, Kai sat by the fire with his grandmother, her gentle hands weaving a basket. She had always been the cornerstone of his life, the one who had taught him the values that shaped his character. She looked at him with a knowing gaze, her eyes filled with both pride and concern. "Kai," she said softly, "you must never forget where you come from. Your dreams are important, but the love of your family is the foundation upon which they will stand." Her words echoed in his heart, and for the first time in a long while, Kai realized how true they were. The next day, as Kai set off for the city to pursue his dreams, he thought of his family, the ones who had stood by him through every hardship, every moment of doubt. They had sacrificed so much to ensure he had the chance to follow his path. His mother, who had worked tirelessly to provide for him. His father, who had never complained, even when life was hardest. His siblings, who had shared what little they had without hesitation. In the face of all this love, Kai knew he couldn't forget them. His dreams would mean nothing if they were left behind. As the weeks passed, Kai found success in his endeavors. He built a name for himself, and the life he had always dreamed of began to take shape. Yet, no matter how much he achieved, a feeling of emptiness lingered. He had worked so hard to climb the ladder of success, but in the process, he had distanced himself from the ones who mattered most. His visits home became less frequent, his calls shorter. He became caught up in the world of ambition, believing that his dreams would be enough to bring him fulfillment. But deep inside, he knew something was missing. One winter evening, as Kai returned home for a visit, he was greeted by the familiar warmth of his family's home. The fire crackled in the hearth, and the scent of his mother's cooking filled the air. As he sat down at the table, surrounded by those who had always loved him, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His heart swelled as he looked around at the faces of those who had sacrificed so much for him. In that moment, Kai understood that the love and care of his family were the true blessings in his life. It wasn't the success or the recognition that mattered most, it was the bonds of love, the quiet moments of service, and kindness that had been woven into the fabric of his life. His grandmother, now frail with age, reached out and placed her hand over his. "You are a strong man, Kai," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But remember, the strength of a man is not measured by what he achieves alone. It is measured by how he loves and serves those who walk beside him. Your dreams are a gift, but they must never come at the cost of the ones who have given you everything." Kai felt tears well up in his eyes. Her words were like the firelight, warm and comforting, yet they burned deep into his soul. He had been so focused on the future that he had forgotten the importance of the present. From that day forward, Kai made a promise to himself and to his family. He would no longer let his dreams take precedence over the people who mattered most. He would serve them, love them, and cherish them every day. He understood now that true success wasn't just about achieving greatness. It was about sharing that greatness with those who had supported him, walking side by side with them on the journey. As the years passed, Kai's dreams continued to grow, but so did his love for his family. He learned that no matter how high he reached, the foundation of his success would always be rooted in the love and care of those who had been there from the beginning. And with each blessing he received, he gave back to those who had given him everything, knowing that the greatest gift of all was not found in material wealth or recognition, but in the service of others, the nurturing of relationships, and the bonds of family. Talon had always known the path of life would not be easy. His people had taught him from a young age that the earth itself was a teacher, one that did not offer its gifts freely, but instead required perseverance and respect. He learned early that true strength was not measured by how quickly you could achieve your goals, but by how steadfastly you could hold on in the face of adversity. From the moment Talon could walk, he had been taught to honor the spirits of the land, the wind, and the sky. But most of all, he was taught to honor the strength of his ancestors and the power of faith. As Talon grew older, life began to challenge him in ways he hadn't expected. The village that had once thrived in harmony with nature faced struggles. The crops had failed 2 seasons in a row, and the animals were growing scarcer. Talon felt the weight of these challenges bearing down on him. He watched as his people struggled to keep the old ways alive, and he too felt the fear that sometimes clouded their hearts. But deep within, a quiet voice urged him not to despair, to hold firm to the belief that there was strength in the struggle, that every difficulty could be overcome with patience and faith. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Talon sat alone by the river, the gentle rush of the water offering a soft rhythm to his thoughts. The journey had been long, and the trials had not yet ended. His heart felt heavy, yet his spirit remained unwavering. He remembered the words of his father, who had taught him to walk in faith no matter how dark the night. "Even the longest journey begins with a single step," his father had said. "You must walk through the shadows to find the light, and in that light you will grow stronger." Talon closed his eyes and let the sound of the river fill him. He knew that his faith was being tested, but he also knew that God had promised blessings for those who remained faithful. The trials were not signs of failure, they were the forge that would shape him into something stronger. As the seasons passed, Talon faced more challenges. The drought continued and the crops did not return. His family grew hungry and the villagers began to lose hope. Yet Talon remained steadfast. Every morning he rose with the sun, offering a prayer to the spirits for strength and guidance. He worked tirelessly, even when others gave up, and slowly but surely, something began to shift. The land, though battered and worn, began to show signs of life. Talon's efforts were not in vain, and he knew that his faith had been the driving force behind it all. He trusted that God's promises would be fulfilled if he continued to walk the path with patience and faith. One night, as Talon sat by the fire, he looked up at the stars. They twinkled above him, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, light was always present. He had seen his share of struggles, but he now knew that each one had brought him closer to the man he was meant to become. His faith had not only sustained him, but had allowed him to see the world with new eyes. The struggles had not broken him, they had strengthened him. And as he looked around at his village, he saw that the same faith had begun to heal the hearts of his people. They had seen his perseverance, his trust in God, and it had inspired them to rise up as well. The blessings that Talon had long prayed for began to flow in ways he had never expected. The rains returned, the crops flourished, and the animals came back to the land. But the greatest blessing of all was the peace that settled in his heart. He had learned that blessings were not just about abundance, they were about the strength to endure, the wisdom to know when to rest, and the courage to keep going when the path was unclear. Talon knew that faith was not a guarantee of an easy life, but it was a guarantee that you would never walk alone. With God's guidance, he had not only survived the trials of life, but had become stronger because of them. In time, Talon became a leader in his village. His story of patience and faith inspired those who had lost hope. He reminded them that struggles were a part of life, but they were not the end of the journey. As long as they held fast to their faith, they would find strength in the struggle. The blessings that followed were not just the fruits of the land, but the fruits of a life lived in trust. Talon had learned that true strength came not from avoiding difficulty, but from embracing it. Knowing that God's promises were always greater than the trials that came before him, Naya had always carried the weight of the past with her, like a heavy stone that she could never put down. Her heart ached from the wrongs that had been done to her, and she carried the scars of those wounds wherever she went. It was not just the actions of others that weighed on her, but the resentment she had held onto for years. The pain was woven into her spirit, and though she was strong, it seemed that every step she took was burdened by it. She had always believed that forgiveness was something she could not give, that those who had hurt her did not deserve the peace it could bring. But the more she carried the burden, the heavier her soul felt, and she knew deep down that something needed to change. One evening, as Naya sat by the fire, watching the flames dance and crackle, she felt a deep stirring within her heart. The winds whispered through the trees, and the moonlight cast its soft glow over the land. It was in this moment of quiet reflection that Naya heard the voice of the spirits, gentle yet firm, like the wind that shapes the earth. "Forgiveness is not for the one who has wronged you," the voice spoke. "It is for you to free your heart from the chains that bind it." These words echoed in her soul, and for the first time, Naya felt the weight of her resentment lift. Just slightly. She realized that holding on to anger was like carrying a burning, coal-lit hurt only herself. The next day, Naya walked through the forest, seeking guidance from the land and the spirits. She had always found peace in the stillness of nature, but now she sought more than peace-ish, sought healing. As she walked, she saw the trees, the mountains, and the rivers, all enduring the seasons, growing stronger with each cycle. She thought of the times in her life when she, too, had been hurt by others. The wounds, though deep, had been part of her journey. They had shaped her, but they no longer had to control her. The land had taught her that life was not about avoiding pain, but about learning how to heal from it. She knew now that forgiveness was the path to that healing. For the first time, Naya felt a sense of peace as she walked, feeling the connection to the earth beneath her feet. She had long believed that the pain from the past could never be forgotten, that it was part of who she was. But now she understood that forgiveness was not about forgetting it, was about releasing the hold that the past had over her. The spirits had shown her that when she forgave, she was not excusing the wrongs done to her, but freeing herself from the grip of resentment. With each step she took, she felt lighter, as if the burden she had carried for so long were being lifted. There was a young man named Ahuli whose name meant thunder, for he was a child of great strength and power, but also of deep inner conflict. His people, the Lakota, taught him from a young age that life was not always about the ease of the journey, but about the strength you showed in the face of the storm. Ahuli grew up surrounded by the wisdom of his elders, who spoke of the Creator and the Great Spirit that guided their lives. They told him that life was a series of challenges, each meant to strengthen the spirit, sharpen the mind, and bring about a deeper understanding of the Creator's love. But as Ahuli grew, he began to struggle with this wisdom. The more he faced hardships, the more he began to doubt the Creator's plan. His heart grew heavy with unanswered questions, and though he tried to live in harmony with his people, he felt disconnected, as though the storms of life were too much for him to bear. One cold morning, Ahuli walked alone along the riverbank, his footsteps silent on the frosty ground. The wind whispered through the trees, and the mountains stood tall in the distance, their snow-capped peaks reflecting the soft light of dawn. Ahuli sat beside the river, watching the water flow relentlessly, no matter the obstacles in its path. As the ripples moved swiftly past him, he thought of his life, how it too had been filled with obstacles. He had lost his father to illness when he was young, and his mother had passed soon after, leaving him to fend for himself. He had seen the people of his tribe suffer through many winters with little food and harsh cold. Ahuli had tried to stand strong, but now, as he sat by the river, he wondered if his strength was enough. He wondered if the Creator had truly placed him on a path that would lead to peace. It was then that he heard the voice of the wind, soft but clear, as if the Great Spirit was speaking directly to him. Ahuli, the voice said, do not let the storm within you overwhelm the storm outside of you. Life is not about avoiding challenges, but about learning to trust in the Creator through them. Do not let fear take root in your heart, for it is with faith that you will rise above the challenges that lay before you. The voice of the wind filled Ahuli's spirit with a sense of peace, though it was not a peace that came from the absence of struggle. It was the peace that came from knowing that, no matter how fierce the storm, there was always hope, always light, always the presence of the Creator guiding him. Ahuli sat for a long time by the river, reflecting on the words of the wind. He had lived much of his life in fear, afraid that the challenges he faced would break him. But now, in the stillness of that moment, he realized something. He had never truly trusted in the Creator's guidance. He had focused on the storms, the obstacles, the struggles. He had not seen them as opportunities to grow, to connect more deeply with the Creator's love and care. And so, Ahuli stood, feeling the power of the river flowing beside him, feeling the strength of the mountains in the distance, and he made a decision. He would not face the storms of his life with fear any longer. He would face them with faith, with hope, and with the confidence that no matter the challenge, the Creator was with him. As Ahuli walked back to his village, he began to notice things he had never seen before. The sun seemed brighter, the trees taller, the air fresher. It was as if the world around him had changed, or perhaps it was his perspective that had shifted. He realized that the Creator had always been there, in every leaf, in every stone, in every river. The challenges in his life were not signs of abandonment. They were opportunities to experience the Creator's love more deeply, to grow stronger, to live with unwavering faith. And in that moment, Ahuli knew that his life would not be defined by his struggles, but by his ability to face them with the strength of his faith. The storms would come, yes, but they would no longer break him. Instead, they would make him stronger, as the mountains grow taller with each storm that passes over them. The weeks that followed were not without their challenges, but Ahuli walked through them with a newfound strength. He no longer saw the difficulties as obstacles to his happiness, but as part of the journey that the Creator had set before him. Each challenge became an opportunity to trust more deeply, to grow more resilient, and to feel the Creator's presence in ways he had never felt before. He became a beacon of hope for others in his village, reminding them that faith was not about living a life free of hardship, but about trusting in the Creator's love even in the hardest of times. One evening, as Ahuli sat beneath the stars, he closed his eyes and gave thanks. He thanked the Creator for the strength to endure, for the challenges that had shaped him, and for the unwavering faith that had carried him through. He knew that his journey was not over, but he also knew that he was no longer afraid. The storms would come, but he would face them with confidence, knowing that the Creator was with him every step of the way. And as he sat there, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the night, Ahuli felt at peace. He had found his faith again, and with it, he had found his strength. He knew that, no matter what came, he would never walk alone. As the days passed, Ahuli's life began to transform in ways he could not have predicted. The village, once weighed down by hardships, seemed to breathe easier. People began to follow Ahuli's example, walking, with their heads held high, facing the storms of life with renewed strength. Ahuli, now known as the man who had learned to walk with unwavering faith, became a leader in his community, not through authority or titles, but through his quiet courage and steadfast spirit. One evening, as he walked with the people of his village toward the sacred grounds, Ahuli paused and looked up at the sky. The stars sparkled brightly above him, and he felt a deep connection to everything around him. The river, the trees, the land, they were all part of the Creator's plan, just as he was. He understood now that his life was not just his own, but part of a much greater tapestry. Every challenge, every moment of struggle had led him to this point. He turned to his people and spoke softly. Remember, the Creator does not promise a life without storms, but he promises that we will never face them alone. Let our hearts be filled with faith, and we will find strength in the winds, in the rain, and in the quiet moments between. As the people listened, Ahuli felt a deep peace fill his soul. The storm of his past was behind him, and the road ahead was one of faith, hope, and the unwavering love of the Creator. With each step, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be.